He doesn't play by the book, yet there is a logic to it. Our feature today, 5 statements to make sense of Trump. Grace and peace, everyone. Let's reflect together on the many events that have happened in the world recently, particularly in the years since Trump took office. The 2 biggest issues that come to mind are, first, tariffs, and second, war. Some see the tariff rates and figures as unreasonable, while others perceive a deeper strategy behind them. Regarding war, several recent conflicts are linked to Trump. The Russia-Ukraine war began in 2022 and is now entering its 4th year. Trump's desire to mediate, whether with Russia or Ukraine, is an extremely difficult task. He has said many times that if he had been in office, this war would not have happened. At times, his approach can make him seem to support Russia, at other times, Ukraine. Then, there's Venezuela. President Maduro publicly taunted the U.S. military, saying, "Come and get me." The result was a swift military operation in which he was captured by U.S. forces. Then there's Iran in the Persian Gulf, which has been developing nuclear weapons in recent years. Its Revolutionary Guard and military units, much like the terrorist group Hamas, seek to destroy both Israel and the United States. They are backed by allies, both militarily and economically. A few hours after the outbreak of hostilities on February 28 of this year, their leader, Khamenei, was eliminated. The successor, who was chosen, was also subsequently eliminated. The situation has now moved into peace talks. At times, Trump appears very tough, but then he sometimes seems to pull back suddenly. The U.S. Navy and Air Force destroyed their military facilities. Even after the leadership was eliminated, sporadic counterattacks continued, targeting not only U.S. and Israeli forces, but also neighboring countries with indiscriminate attacks. The U.S. did not escalate its military response. Did he back down, or was he engaged in private negotiations with relevant Iranian figures? The next challenge to be addressed is Cuba. Much has happened this year, and these are just the notable events on the surface. Our topic today is to make sense of Trump, and we'll do it in 5 statements. Can you make sense of Trump? It often feels like he doesn't play by the book. Yet, this same person has achieved success in business, politics, and the military. Is he likable or detestable? Television, the internet, and various media outlets have different opinions. Today, we'll use 5 statements to understand him. First, he is right-wing. In these last days, the world has entered a fierce struggle between the right and the left. Let's first look at the Bible. The heart of the wise inclines to the right, but the heart of the fool to the left. Fools are put in many high positions, while the rich occupy the low ones. I have seen slaves on horseback, while princes go on foot like slaves. The heart of the wise inclines to the right. Scripture says that wisdom is connected to Christ. Indeed, the wise are also the righteous. The righteous are on the right. The fool, the sinner, is on the left. What is the meaning of right and left? The passage goes on to explain. Fools are put in many high positions, giving orders and exerting influence, while the rich occupy the low ones. Like employers and landowners who hire workers and farmers to labor for them. Yet their positions are reversed. They became employers and landowners for a reason, yet they actually occupy the low positions. The same is true between slave and prince. The prince should ride the horse, and the slave leads it for him. But some say this is unfair to the slave. So the slave rides, and the prince walks on foot like a slave. This mindset is called left wing. Let's organize a summary regarding the right wing and the left wing. The right stands for order and structure, the left for disorder. The 2 examples mentioned, the rich in high positions is right wing, the fool in high positions is left wing. Right wing is the prince riding, left wing is the slave riding. The right wing says, the murderer must die. The left wing says, abolish the death penalty. The right wing, the world was made for humanity. The left wing, extreme environmentalism, loving the environment and animals is right, but not more than loving people. Right wing, marriage is between a man and a woman. Left wing, encourages homosexuality and transgenderism. Why should I be told to marry the opposite sex? I will marry the same sex or change my gender. And not only do it themselves, but encourage others to do it. Right wing, the man is the head. Left wing, emphasizes women's rights above men. We are certainly not promoting male supremacy, but men, by nature, in both tangible and intangible ways, do have capacities that exceed women's. Therefore, man must give more, take the lead, and bear the responsibility. The left, however, is disorderly in its emphasis on women's rights. The right wing believes in governance. The left wing leans toward anarchism. This governance is about order, like parents to children, teachers to students. The right wing stands for order, the left wing for disorder. Why should I listen to the teacher? I won't. Why listen to my parents? I won't. Why marry someone of the opposite sex? I refuse. That is the left wing, no order. The right wing says, apply for immigration legally. The left wing says, allow illegal immigration, even turning a blind eye to $0 shopping by these immigrants. $0 shopping is in fact theft and robbery. If the theft is below a set value, the law treats it as a non-crime, a policy set by left-wing officials who tolerate illegal immigration. The right wing supports Israel, both the tangible and the spiritual Israel. The left wing opposes Israel. There are many other examples, but the key point is the right wing is of Christ, the left wing is antichrist. For the heart of the wise inclines to the right, but the heart of the fool to the left. There are many more complex definitions of right and left, but we'll simplify it here. The right leans toward order, the left leans toward disorder. However, we are not advocating the extreme right either. The far right is essentially the same as the left. Here's an example. A landowner hires farmers to work, paying them wages. Then these farmers say, why are we being exploited by the landowner? Let's rise up, overthrow him, overthrow these landowners, even kill them, and divide their property equally. Yet, once they themselves occupy the landowner's position, they become the far right. They then stand in the landowner's place to oppress the farmers because their status has changed. So the far right is actually the left. When you excessively tolerate illegal immigration, even granting them voting rights. In recent years, the US has been debating an absurd issue, whether to require ID for voting. It's unimaginable. If voting doesn't require ID, these illegal immigrants would certainly vote for left-wing officials. Once they come to power, they will enact policies that forcibly favor the left. For example, the newly elected mayor of New York is a Muslim and a leftist. His campaign slogan was essentially, "This is free, that is free, all sorts of benefits." It may seem like compassion for the disadvantaged, but it has gone too far. New York now faces a situation where the wealthy are fleeing, and disorder is increasing. This is a case of bad money driving out good, and when they are in power, they impose leftist ideology as if it's the only acceptable belief, which becomes the far right. Therefore, the far right still belongs to the left. So, using this simple distinction, the right belongs to Christ and is orderly, the left is antichrist and is disorderly. We must understand this. A thief likes to have others join him in the crime. Let's look at the scripture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. The thief steals, kills, and destroys people's lives and all kinds of abundance. The left is like the thief. Jesus said, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full, to have a proper order. Something happened in Sodom. 2 angels went to Sodom to investigate. Before they had gone to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. They called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them." Genesis 19 tells us that the two angels were male. Yet, when they came to Lot's house, the people of the city, both old and young, came out wanting to have sex with them. We know these angels were male. Their actions were certainly not a one-time occurrence. It's a deep-seated problem, and they were accustomed to this. Therefore, do not take lightly the sin of homosexuality and transgenderism. Thieves love accomplices. Although they know God's righteous decree that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these very things, but also approve of those who practice them. This is why the left encourages others to undergo gender transition, promotes homosexuality, and even family incest. As Romans says, they not only continue to do these very things, but also approve of those who practice them. The purpose is to steal, kill, and destroy. Therefore, the key is that we support the right, not the woke left. The left is also mocked as being rigid, like hardened plastic, fossilized in ideology, stubbornly insisting on their way. During Biden's term, USA was established using US money to spend nearly $10 billion supporting leftist causes worldwide, including homosexuality, transgender issues, and those vaccines, among others. Even Taiwan has received funding from them. We can observe that since Trump took office, the momentum behind the LGBTQ+ and DEI agenda has lost some steam. This is because this agenda was interrupted by Trump. He is right-wing. He aims to combat this woke ideology. In Taiwan, there is an organization called the Taiwan Fact-Check Center. If you oppose homosexuality or transgenderism, it comes out to fact-check, saying this is incorrect, that statement is wrong. If you oppose those vaccines, it comes out to fact-check. Actually, these are all part of the woke left, and the center receives funding from USAID. This is just an example. Therefore, Trump is right-wing. He combats transgenderism and LGBTQ agenda. Trump signed an executive order prohibiting the use of federal funds for gender transition medical procedures. One case involved USAID spending $2 million for a sex change surgery for one person in Guatemala, providing free gender transition surgery. I'd say the woke left is so absurd it's beyond imagination. Furthermore, he pushed for a ban on biological males in women's sports, rallying supporters with the slogan, "No men in women's sports." If you recall, at the Olympics, 2 athletes who appeared male competed in women's boxing and won gold. One was from Turkey and one was from Taiwan. For us personally, if you're from Taiwan, someone winning a gold medal might bring a sense of shared pride. But we need to understand we have a heavenly identity. Citizens of heaven belong to the kingdom of heaven. We are the right wing. This is the behavior of the left wing. In many gender verification tests, they either could not pass or refused to be tested. In truth, to the ordinary eye, they look like males. The woke left will support this sort of thing. Brothers and sisters, we must always remember we are citizens of heaven beyond this world. The situation will become clearer and clearer because I am of the right wing. I am a citizen of heaven. Let me add a note. I haven't voted for about 10 years now because I want to vote for the right wing, but Taiwan is currently all left wing. So it's not that I oppose this one and therefore support the other. We need a higher perspective, a vision that surpasses earthly politics. True love for children means protecting them from such abuse. There are even policies that allow minors to undergo gender transition without parental consent. Trump has called gender transition procedures for minors a form of child abuse, mutilating our youth. Next is the restoration of traditional values. America is a Christian nation. That is correct. Of course, Christianity is not the state religion. It's not mandatory to be a Christian. there is religious freedom. But the founding fathers established the nation on Christian values. Hence, the push for a national prayer initiative promoting prayer in schools nationwide, prayer in government, and faith in the military. These are things that were banned under left-wing administrations. Therefore, when we see these things, some happening in the US, some around the world, it's because the conflict between the right and the left is an extremely intense reality of the end times. Second, he is the President of the United States. His MAGA movement, Make America Great Again. Some ask, why should he want to make America great again? That's not fair. That's woke left thinking. Because he is the President of the United States. That's not wrong. Yet, we need to understand America truly is a superpower, but it faces two huge problems that are very hard to solve. America's military strength is equal to the combined total of the world's second through 20th strongest militaries. It has 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. I used to say no other country in the world has them, but I later learned France does, though its presence is virtually negligible. The carriers of other nations are either undergoing maintenance or on their way to be maintained. The difference is truly immense. The United States has two huge problems that are very hard to solve. The first is the power of the left. This left-wing force brings disorder to the nation. As we said earlier, the left is about disorder, pushing these agendas and insisting on them. America will grow weaker because of it. And once they are in power, they force these things through with a heavy hand. They become stubborn and fossilized, utterly inflexible, with no reasonable logic, only a rigid commitment to a false ideology. So when Trump said he would build a border wall, many thought it was impossible. Who would have thought he actually did it? In his first term, he started the work. After being interrupted by Biden, it is now being resumed. Because the right wing stands for order. If you want to immigrate legally. Don't commit crimes. But the left wing aims to attack Trump, and many media outlets grossly exaggerate and take his words out of context. Of course, it's true that he speaks unpredictably. Sometimes it can be startling. That gives critics an opening to attack him. But we need to understand, what he does is of the right wing. It brings order. We must see the essence of the matter, and there's a reason behind what he says. Later, we'll continue to see that this is part of his strategy. So the first huge problem for America is that the left brings disorder to the nation. The second problem is the national debt. America's national debt has reached astronomical figures, currently at $39 trillion, which is 130% of GDP. For comparison, its annual fiscal revenue is about $5 trillion, while its debt stands at $39 trillion. Let's also compare other countries. National debt isn't just America's problem. It's an issue for many nations around the world. China's debt is $18 trillion, with fiscal revenue of about $3 trillion. Japan's is $9.8 trillion, with revenue around $1.5 trillion. The list continues with the UK and France. Let me add a note. Japan's national debt is 230% of GDP, which looks very high. But the Japanese are very united. They prioritize buying a huge amount of their own domestic debt. Plus, they hold a lot of hidden assets abroad, so their fiscal health remains quite sound. As for some other countries, because information is less transparent, the actual debt-to-GDP ratio could be even higher. As for Taiwan, the debt-to-GDP ratio is about 25%, provided here for your reference. Coming back to the point, the U.S. national debt stands at $39 trillion. The annual interest alone is about $1 trillion. With fiscal revenue of $5 trillion, that means 20% goes just to pay interest. This is a huge problem. We need to think about how the national debt came about. Simply put, they spent more than they earned. Over the past few decades, America has acted as the world's police in Europe in Asia, with troops stationed in many countries and its 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers patrolling the globe. As for American spending habits, the savings rate is very low. They rely on a credit-based system. In short, borrowing from banks and using credit cards. By 2024, the amount the US spends on interest payments has already surpassed its defense spending, and currently it is even higher. You may think the US military is strong. That's true. But the interest on the national debt, its expenditure is even greater than that of the US military. How does a typical country create money, that is, physical currency, the paper bills? There are mainly two ways. The first is issuing national debt and printing money. When spending exceeds earnings, the government issues national debt, which is bought by its own people or by foreign buyers. They give money to the government. The government gives them bonds to be repaid when due, along with interest payments. In short, it's borrowing. The other way is to print money. Printing money requires discipline. The currency printed is essentially a debt, unless it is backed by an equivalent value in gold or US dollars. There are details here that would take a lot of explanation, but it's enough for us to understand it this way. Simply put, printed currency is a liability. The more you print, the more of that money others can use to buy goods, which generates inflation. Many countries go bankrupt because of excessive money printing. Issuing national debt, on the other hand, uses existing currency through the sale of government bonds. That money is brought into the national treasury for various uses. The United States provides the world's currency, so its debt is sold globally. The US government issues debt, yet it cannot directly print money. This is different from other countries. Who are the holders of the national debt? First, the Federal Reserve prints money to buy it. Second, other countries that buy it, whether purchased by foreign nations or domestically, including by Americans. That's the general picture. What makes the US special is that it has the Federal Reserve, which decides when to print money. When America needs cash, when it needs money, it must go through the Federal Reserve. In most countries, it's the government that decides. Only the United States is unique. It's done through the Federal Reserve, not by the president or the administrative agencies. So when America needs cash, when it needs money, it must issue debt and sell it on the market. For example, it issues $10 billion. Think carefully about the following process. The Federal Reserve prints $10 billion and uses that newly printed money to buy the debt. That's how $10 billion in US dollars comes into existence. Doesn't it strike you as odd? Why does the Federal Reserve have so much power, even surpassing the president? I know many people can't accept it, but the Federal Reserve is a problematic entity. The CEO of JP Morgan Chase said, "The collapse of the US bond market is only a matter of time, because whenever the US prints money, it creates debt, and the government has no direct control over it." The Federal Reserve is not a fully state-owned institution. It is a public-private hybrid, and the private shareholding portion is actually larger. Has anyone tried to change this arrangement? Those who have tried were people in positions of great power, such as US presidents. What happened to them? Being president of the United States is dangerous. One man said, "Give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws." That man was Rothschild. There are many circulating books that talk about the Rothschilds. They are the wealthiest family in the world, period. Yet, on global wealth rankings, they never appear, which makes them seem all the more mysterious. Some call it a conspiracy theory. After reading many books and related materials, I say it is not a conspiracy theory. It is real. Moreover, the Rothschild family, through indirect holdings, are the largest shareholders of the Federal Reserve. That's why he said, "I care not who makes the laws, because the Federal Reserve can control the nation's money supply. It decides when to print money, And in today's digital currency era, it doesn't even need a printing press. It can just add digits in the banks. The scale of that influence is hard to overstate. Trump once said being president is an extremely dangerous job. He compared it to race car drivers and bullfighters whose mortality rate is about 1 in 1,000, whereas for president, the rate is roughly 5%. If someone had told me that earlier, I might not have run. He's a billionaire real estate tycoon. If you were a billionaire real estate tycoon nearing 80, would you run for president? Wouldn't you rather travel the world and enjoy life? Because the mortality rate for presidents is 5%, probably even higher. The record shows that out of 45 US presidents, 18 faced assassination attempts and 4 died from them. In terms of mortality rate, that would actually be about 8.9%. His odds of facing an assassination attempt are around 40%. The 4 presidents assassinated were Lincoln, Garfield, McKinley, and Kennedy. Of these 4, 3 are definitively linked to monetary issues. President Lincoln had already recognized America's problem. It couldn't print its own currency, so he sought to introduce the greenback and was assassinated. President McKinley believed in promoting the U.S. gold standard. The U.S. dollar was once called U.S. gold in Chinese, meaning the currency was backed by gold as collateral. For a country to print that much paper money, it needed an equal amount of gold in reserve that was sound. He was assassinated. Kennedy proposed using silver and was also assassinated. Is that so hard to figure out? The U.S. Federal Reserve controls the power to print U.S. dollars, and it is not under the jurisdiction of the U.S. president. Is it state-owned or privately owned? That's something we can think about. It could easily fill 3 feature topics. So let's go straight to the conclusion. Who has the capability and the nerve to assassinate a U.S. president? As the saying goes, money makes the world go round. The power of money is immense, especially since this money can simply be printed by the printing press. Perhaps we'll do a dedicated feature to unpack that later. Here, our main focus is the U.S. national debt. It's as if this strong nation, America, has a parasite on its back, constantly sucking its blood. Even though it's powerful and earns money from the world, it's also constantly being drained. You could say it's quite helpless and nearly impossible to shake off. We are not conspiracy theorists, as in seeing a conspiracy in everything, even thinking the earth being round is a conspiracy. No, we believe the earth is round, yet we also believe conspiracies exist in this world. Actually, it's quite obvious. The simple believe anything, but the prudent give thought to their steps. We need to see the situation clearly and look at the evidence. Returning to the point, being president of the United States is dangerous because anyone who tries to solve these 2 problems, the left wing and the national debt, is at high risk of assassination. Aside from presidents, Charlie Kirk was also assassinated. Do you think the right wing would assassinate him? It was definitely the work of the left wing. So who is good and who is evil? Isn't it rather clear? Third, he is a businessman and a soldier. He was born into a wealthy real estate family. He is intensely competitive. His father was a wealthy businessman, though not yet at the level of a tycoon. Let me give a few examples. Although the family had money, they didn't hire servants. And because he was big and tall, he was also a talented baseball player. Because he kept getting into fights, his father sent him off to military school. Not only that, his own children also received an excellent education. Because children are the fruit a person produces. When we look at someone, we should look at his children. Each one turned out well, with high achievements. You might say, of course, wealthy people have achievements. That's not necessarily true. There are plenty of spoiled heirs who squander the family fortune. If you're interested, you can compare Biden's son. One is from the right, the other from the left. The difference is huge. Later, he started his own business and became a real estate tycoon. He has often been the center of media attention. His last name, Trump, has roots, meaning one who blows a trumpet. I often think it really fits the person. His name literally means loud horn, and that's how he speaks. Famous for his unfiltered comments. He also went through bankruptcy. Some criticize him for having 3 marriages and being unfaithful in marriage. That's true. It's his shortcoming. But I also have to ask, if you had that much wealth, would you maintain one wife on the surface while actually having 30 mistresses? He didn't do that. He could have, couldn't he? He wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. A person's book is the essence of his thinking. All those blunt, exaggerated remarks of his are actually a kind of strategy. He is the 45th and 47th president. If we want to understand him, we need to recognize his 2 identities. One is the businessman. Business is about deals, about negotiation. The other is the soldier, competitive, tough, and uncompromising. So, why is he both tough and yet a taco? Taco stands for Trump always chickens out. That is, Trump always retreats at the last moment. This is the point on which the media and many people mock him. Let's look at the image. A person wants to land a big fish. When he tries to reel it in, we should think carefully. Can he just stubbornly keep reeling and pulling without stopping? No, he can't. He has to reel in a little, then let out a little. Reel in, let out. That way, the big fish being hooked gets tired from it. When he gets tough, he has the world's strongest military and the US dollar, the strongest currency too. He uses these 2 weapons, but he doesn't just keep pushing nonstop. He knows when to ease off. Remember, just before the US was about to strike Iran, there was that news story. A US aircraft carrier's toilets were severely clogged because the water lines were blocked. Many mocked it, saying the carrier couldn't fight. Doesn't that seem like it could have been a smokescreen? Because not long after, the US military launched the war, a lightning surprise attack, not only decapitating the leadership, but also swiftly destroying various military and air defense facilities. Therefore, you must reel in and let out to land the big fish. This is the way of the businessman. The Art of War says, when able, feign inability. When active, feign inactivity. Sometimes you have to pretend you can't. Sometimes you have to pretend you're not going to act. And then strike with surprise. I'm curious why so many people in the world can't see this. I've never considered it a problem. When we see the surface, we need to look at the essence. During the US-Soviet Cold War, America was clearly strong, but it gave rise to white leftists who pushed left-wing policies. The Soviets called them useful idiots. It sounds like an insult, and it is, but here, useful means that when the opponent's side has idiots, it actually benefits us. We stand with the right wing. I'm just quoting others here. So letting the left remain clueless isn't a bad thing. In fact, Trump's taco is a strategy. And these useful fools who still don't get it are being picked off one by one. Part of me hopes the left doesn't see this video because letting them stay in the dark is actually good. Another part hopes they'll realize their own ignorance. The right wing is winning continuously. The left is being defeated repeatedly. By understanding the character of the businessman and the soldier, we can see how Trump operates. He is not only a businessman and a soldier, he is also a human being, a person with flaws. We need to understand that God uses imperfect people. The greatest king of Israel, King David, was a man after God's own heart. Yet he sinned. He was not perfect. To satisfy his own lust, he took another man's wife and had her husband killed. God disciplined him severely and struck him. Yet he remained a man after God's own heart, used by God. He had his own lessons to face. We are not supporting any earthly figure. We are 100% for Jesus. We are 100% for the right wing. Whoever is of Christ, whoever is of the right wing, we support that person. The ancients said, those who achieve great things do not get bogged down in small matters. That doesn't mean those small matters are right. Everyone has flaws. You and I have flaws. We must look at the great things he has accomplished, not get stuck on relatively minor issues. Here we need to look at it objectively. A person in power, say, the president of a nation, the US president, can lead the whole country toward change. For instance, a structural shift in industry, making it healthier and better. During that process, there are winners. For example, within the US today, the oil sector, the automotive industry, and some tech and traditional industries have been greatly helped because Trump brought a lot of manufacturing back to the US. So there are winners. Are those gains distributed evenly? No. Some gain a lot, some gain less. Hence, there will be some gray areas. Let's continue. After those gray areas, you get corruption and the privatization of the public treasury. So the ideal is a healthy structural change in industry where everyone gains and gaining evenly. But that's impossible to achieve. Some industries will inevitably gain more. There's a gray area we should also point out. When the US military attacks Iran, oil prices are bound to rise. The Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz in the Middle East affect the transport of all crude oil. Whenever there's war, oil prices go up. Whenever there's peace talks, they go down. Do you think it's possible that the person in power positions himself in advance in the stock market, exchange rates, futures, gold, silver, etc.? If he plans it that way, it can actually be done. These are the kinds of gray areas we're talking about. We can say that in any regime we observe, when it comes to structural industrial change, there are winners, gray areas. They all exist. It's mainly a matter of degree. Therefore, these gray areas can become points of criticism. However, in a nation of law, what matters is whether it's illegal. And in reality, the ruling party in any country needs the support of industry. Hence, it has a dual nature. On one side, it's positive, proactive, and meaningful. On the other hand, some people will criticize it. Of course, criticism is possible, but everyone should also examine themselves. If you were in his place, would you do any better? Are you certain you wouldn't fall into corruption or something like a dictator, using state money for his own party's benefit? Would you do any better? Everyone needs to think about that, because one day, every person will stand before the judgment seat of God. King David was a man after God's own heart, yet he sinned. Trump is of the right wing, the US president, a businessman, a soldier. He is also a man with flaws. Looking back, if I were his age and had that much wealth, I certainly wouldn't risk my life to be president of the United States, and on top of that, face constant criticism. In short, he aims to solve America's two big problems, the left wing and the national debt, using the military and the US dollar to drive structural industrial change. There will be winners and there will be gray areas. Then, personally speaking, with all these achievements, might it lead to pride? I suppose it could. Therefore, we need to pray for him. Fourth, he is a Christian. He restored faith in schools, government, and the military, and often asks pastors to pray for him. He launched the Freedom 250 plan to commemorate America's 250th anniversary, promoting a series of religious events. He also initiated the American Prayer Initiative, encouraging Americans to pray with 10 people each week. The National Day of Prayer in May turned the National Mall into a massive revival gathering, government-led, president-led. The officially published prayer book mentions Christianity 18 times. Let me add this again. If you are a Christian and you become president of the United States, that doesn't necessarily mean making Christianity the state religion and forcing people to believe. No. It's actually about religious freedom, allowing people to make their own choice. God doesn't force people to believe in him either. He uses many servants and his wonderful works to help people understand, and then they come to faith. Therefore, what he emphasizes is religious freedom. And because America was founded on Christian principles, and he is a Christian, he has promoted many efforts that are favorable to the spread of Christianity, stressing that America's founding principles are rooted in the Judeo-Christian tradition, that is, Christian values. Western Christian nations and Jews and evangelical Christians are Trump's most reliable voting bloc. Trump also appointed 3 conservative Supreme Court justices who adhere to the right wing's values of order and tradition. He helped overturn Roe v. Wade was the case of a 20-year-old woman who sued a prosecutor arguing that abortion was her constitutional right. Of course, there are circumstances, health factors, being subjected to abuse, special cases aside. But in general, the Constitution protects individual liberty, yet abortion is a crime. During his term, he promoted religious freedom policies. In the US, a Muslim can be the mayor of New York City, as well as serve in other legislative offices. There are about 10 such cases. Now, let's flip it around. What can Christians expect in a Muslim country? Probably only persecution. America still emphasizes religious freedom. Therefore, point 4, he is a Christian. Point 5, he's the trumpet of the end times. The name Trump means trumpet. Back in 2016, when he was about to launch his campaign, a prophet at the time prophesied and even published a book saying he would be elected president twice. Many didn't believe it, but he indeed won. Then, in 2020, people again prophesied he would win, but he did not. After that, nobody dared to predict or prophesy anymore because they got it wrong. But we need to understand, when he lost in 2020, right up until 2024, throughout those 4 years, I kept telling people around me, whether friends or family, that Trump would be elected a second time, because the prophecy said a second term, not necessarily consecutive terms. I waited 4 years. I even said it from the pulpit, and saying that was actually quite risky. But I spoke out of the conviction God gave me, and there are brothers and sisters who can testify, having heard my sermons. I said he would be elected a second time, and indeed he was. I even call him Mr. Trumpet. He is Trump. He is the trumpet. He is the trumpet of the end times. This is meaningful. Christians need to pay special attention. We are already in the last days. When we speak of the last days, we must look at Revelation. A crucial part of Revelation is the 3 sets of sevens, the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, and the 7 bowls. The 7 seals unveil mysteries. They speak of human sin, from the white horse, the red horse, the black horse, to the pale horse. Who is harmed? How the wicked respond. Next, we come to the 7 trumpets, warning the world, the earth under curse. The 7 trumpets are the earth, sea, rivers, sun, moon, stars, who is harmed, how the wicked respond. Then comes the next step, the 7 bowls, pouring out wrath, the anger of heaven. Continuing with the earth, sea, rivers, intensified disasters, sun, moon, stars. Who is harmed? How the wicked respond. The next step. So where are we now? At the very least, I believe the 4 seals, the white horse, red horse, black horse, and pale horse, have already been unsealed. It's very possible we are now in the 5th or 6th seal. And these 4 riders keep on running. The white horse is the global event, COVID-19. The red horse is war. The black horse is inflation. The pale horse is famine, plague, death, and war all together. They keep running, growing stronger all the time. So when do we actually enter the time of the 7 trumpets? The stirring in my heart is that this Mr. Trumpet very likely signals the beginning of the 7 trumpets. When God is about to send angels to sound the 7 trumpets, wouldn't he give us clear and subtle signs? And then there appears the most powerful person in the world, whose very name is Trumpet. Can that be a mere coincidence? Therefore, the inner stirring I feel is that he is the forerunner of the 7 trumpets. It's quite possible that after Trump leaves office, or if he is assassinated, whatever the cause, that will be the beginning of the 7 trumpets. This has been the long-held stirring in my heart. Just as I had the conviction that he would be elected president a second time, I'm now sharing this prophecy. In Christ, we can all prophesy. This is the conviction I carry. Therefore, do not quench the spirit. Do not treat prophecies with contempt. When God's servants in this world are shaping the whole global situation, there are many, not just me, but many other servants of God issuing warnings. The scripture says, do not quench the spirit. Do not treat prophecies with contempt, but test them all. Hold on to what is good. We must discern the present situation, understand the prophecies in scripture. Prophecy will certainly be fulfilled. There is a passage of scripture that brings sudden clarity. It is the scene of the day of judgment, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him. He will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. I'll read this bit of small print quickly. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? The king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. I believe every one of us Christians loves Jesus. But how do we love Jesus? How will God judge us at the judgment seat? It's the sheep on the right, goats on the left. The sheep are the true believers. The goats look like sheep, but do not belong to him. And these sheep on the right, what they do for the least of these brothers, they do for Jesus. The goats also answer Jesus. When did we see you hungry, or thirsty, or a stranger, or needing clothes, or sick, or in prison, and did not help you? And Jesus replies, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me. Isn't that clear? A sudden moment of understanding? The last days are a contest between the right wing and the left wing. That is why we make sense of Trump. We make sense of Mr. Trumpet. We know this is the right wing. So we must support our brothers on the right. Do not stand on the sidelines. Take a clear stand for the right wing, for Christian values, not in a vague, ambiguous way, and not just going with the flow. Those who do otherwise will be counted with the goats, placed on the left. Today, we've looked at Trump in 5 statements. He is the right wing, the U.S. president, a businessman, a soldier, a human being, a Christian, and the trumpet of the end times. Looking at it from the 3-level structure, if you look only from the level of the physical, material things, you're just seeing the surface. You need to look higher, see his mind, emotions, and will, see what he intends to do and the reasoning behind it. Because amateurs see the spectacle, but experts see the craft. The simple believe anything, and today there are many left-wing media outlets saying this and that to confuse people. But the prudent give thought to their steps. They look upward. They see faith, God, eternity, and love. That is the 3rd level, the level of the Spirit. Therefore, in the last days contest between right and left, we must emphasize the prudent give thought to their steps. We must not be ambiguous. Our channel is not ambiguous. God's word is clear. The wise inclines to the right, but the fool to the left. Let's draw our conclusion. Today's feature, 5 statements to make sense of Trump. He doesn't play by the book, yet there is a logic to it. The world in the last days has already entered an intense right-left conflict. 5 statements to make sense of Trump. First, he is right-wing. He confronts the woke left. Second, he is the president of the United States. He aims to solve the problems of the left wing and the national debt. Third, he is a human being, a businessman, a soldier, a person with flaws. Fourth, he is a Christian. He has restored faith. Fifth, he is the trumpet of the end times, God's warning to the world. Using these 5 statements, we apply the 3-level structure of spirit, soul, and body to look at Trump. We must see the higher, deeper meaning. Today's feature, 5 statements to make sense of Trump. In the last days, discern the work of God, support his servants, and be among the wise, whose hearts incline to the right. Blessed is the one whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. Fine Food 7 minutes. See you tomorrow.